The People's Platform.
Good evening and welcome to the People's Platform. Now, this year has seen 3 significant tariff revisions to electricity. A 66% increase in February, a 14% decrease in July, and an 18% increase last week. So let's set the stage. At present, there is heavy rainfall being reported across the island. The state-run electricity board has accumulated a loss of rupees 272 billion up to 2022. Ultimately, it is people who have to pay the price, quite literally. To help us understand all the moving parts, we're joined by Professor Anura Wijayapala, the former chairman of the Ceylon Electricity Board, the CEB. Good evening and welcome to you, Professor.
Yes, it's glad to be here, Sonali, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here with us on the show, for helping us comprehend all the moving parts. Professor Wijayapala, ultimately it's a case of the straw that broke the camel's back. How much more can the people take? Can you help us understand what are the wrong decisions that have been made that has led to this exorbitant increase in electricity tariffs?
Yeah, I would call our electricity sector over the last 30-40 years has not been steered in the correct path.
Okay.
It has just floated like a ship without a captain, and in the way that under the whims of the people, the workers, the ministers, politicians, and this sector goes here, there, no one is responsible, no one is accountable in this sector, and the consequences are what we are facing today. And it is no doubt that our Sri Lanka is a small island in the South Asia or in the Asia, and why our electricity costs are one of the highest in the region. That is because of that this sector has been neglected and has been misused by many interested parties in numerous different ways. And ultimate result is we have one of the highest electricity costs in Sri Lanka, and we hear from Public Utilities Commission and from CEB and from the papers, it has to be a cost reflective price. So when your costs are high, definitely the cost reflective prices are higher, and so I don't see an immediate solution to this. No miracle can happen unless we get our electricity generation costs down, and that cannot be done, without being very careful planning, because these projects take long time to plan and implement. Now, if you take a coal power plant, it will take at least 5 to 10 years, maybe 7 years at least for the entire project to be completed. And if you take even a solar power plant, it takes at least 2 years, a sizable solar power plant, and thermal power plants in between, other thermal power plants. So the sector has to be properly planned. For that we can give credit to CEB. CEB has done a good planning job. So they have a long term generation expansion plan which is prepared in a reasonably logical way. Okay. But unfortunately, due to numerous reasons, this book, which has been published every other year over the last 30-40 years, has never been followed, and those projects have not been implemented, and politicians and the cabinets of ministers have interfered and brought their projects in which are not optimal and scrapped what are optimal projects. So the ultimate result is higher cost of generation, which ultimately reflect on the customers.
Understand who the main stakeholders are: the Ceylon Electricity Board, the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka, LECO, the Ministry of Power and Energy, also the private entities who produce and sell to the CEB, and we can't forget the powerful trade unions who within the CEB who at times act in a high-handed manner. So can you just speak to us about this ecosystem, electricity ecosystem? Because I think it's important for our viewers to also understand.
Now if you take CEB is not restructured properly in the early 2000. It was kind of realigned to a generation sector and a transmission sector and a distribution entities, 4 distribution entities.
Okay.
So 4 distribution entities worked in parallel with the Lanka Electricity Company, which was set up in 1980s. And if you look at these 5 distribution entities, Lanka Electricity Company operate as an independent private company. So naturally it has better management and better low losses, and the number of employees per whatever the service they give fairly okay. But whereas in the CEB, these distribution entities are not properly managed the way they should be. I think that is one reason why the present ministry and minister and everybody in the sector agrees this sector has to be restructured, and companies should be made to manage each sector, and accountability should be there. Therefore, I think that this sector should be properly managed through a good restructuring program, but without paving for more corruption to happen. So if the restructuring, through the restructuring process, more corruption happens, our electricity cost will be further going up,
Right.
and the sector will be in turmoil, and therefore I think it should be carefully done with proper professional involvement. I hope that it will be done in that spirit.
Absolutely. So the Minister of Power and Energy has proposed that the CEB has to be restructured, and he also has announced that a new mechanism will be introduced to revise electricity tariffs every 3 months. Professor, could you take us through the implications of this?
Yeah. Now at the present we have twice the year
Right.
tariff revision as per the Electricity Act, one in June effective from July onwards, and one in December effective from January onwards. Sometimes this goes up and down. You can see some this year it happened in February and in June, and now again a third one under special conditions in October. And now if the proposal is to go for quarterly or every 3 months electricity tariffs, we can look at positive as well as negative impacts of that.
Right.
Positive impacts could be the fluctuation of oil prices and fluctuations of hydro generation can reflect into the costs in a quickly, so that people don't have to wait. If there is a huge rainfall, people don't have to wait for 6 months to get the benefit. On the other hand, if there are large price increases in oil, CEB will not have to absorb such cost for a long time, but immediately in 2-3 months time they can have the next tariff filing and recover the cost, increase the prices, so whatever. That is from the positive points. But the negative points will be for especially for the industries and the producers, the price fluctuations will be too much to plan their production and the costs, and make whatever the quotations or agree on the tenders, because they don't, in 3 months time their electricity cost component will be jumping up. So there's a big price uncertainty.
Yeah, and price certainty is a basic prerequisite for a business and
Yes,
industry.
yes. Even now, I think this cost. I think even the PUCSL, I have a doubt with, and the government also, they don't understand this cost reflectivity in the correct sense, in my opinion.
Could you elaborate on that?
My way. For example, see now because of this Gaza Strip war. Now these days the oil prices Brent prices have gone above $90 a barrel. Now it's about $95 a barrel, which used to be about $75 or $75 to $80 per barrel before the war and other things in Gaza. And now because of that, the government adjusts the prices of fuel, and then if we immediately reflect that onto the tariff will go up, just like what has happened, right? Then what happens now? Immediately our industries and producers are feeling the warmth, because their cost of production has gone up. In the international market they can't increase prices, so their margins become low or they make loss making. So, lot of problems for them. But I think this cost reflectivity should have a that some kind of absorption factor by the government or CEB. When a fluctuation comes, it is not immediately dropped on to the customer.
Sure.
So, they absorb it for some time and see whether the price increase is going to be permanent in nature. If it is permanent in nature, they will give the tariff increase quietly to the customers, and meanwhile they will take a loan or whatever, and the interest component will be accumulated to the costs, right. So, but the impact of the high electricity cost, temporary high electricity cost, will not be faced by the industries and the exporters and the producers, and thereby I know that when they increase their product costs, they lose their market share in the international market. Once they lose the market share, it is very difficult to get it back, even though your prices go down. So, it is because some other country will grab that.
Right.
It has happened to our tea industry, for example. Certain segments of the international buyers have moved away from us and gone to other sources,
right,
because of the high cost of production, maybe, or due to a variety of reasons, and also the last year's political turmoil and the interruptions to the supplies, and maybe. So, when you lose the market share, it is difficult to get. Therefore, the public will anyway suffer. Suppose even if they get disconnected, I saw the news yesterday that the CEB has disconnected almost 100,000 houses for non-payment of bills, right, non-payment of bills. And so that, okay, so that does not have a very huge economic impact, they will somehow or other survive. But it is not like that for the exporters and producers and industries, right. So, there were records that some 7,000 or some factories have closed down, and some large number of people have lost the jobs. So, what are the implications of them? How many families go without a permanent earning power capacity?
Yeah.
So, they have multitudes of problems.
Yeah.
Therefore, what I suggest to the government, advise to the government is that please look at it in a sensible way. So, you can explain it to IMF. No, immediately when there is a jump up of fuel prices, so there is a drought and the lowering of hydro generation, do not put immediately next month the impact to the public. Wait a little, absorb that through interest, through a loan or some kind of other financing, and then see whether how it going to behave in the long term, and then only take the decision to increase or decrease the tariffs. But now what I understand is, now for example, take now CEB's initial proposal was they requested for a 22% increase, right, and then immediately rains started, and then in 2 weeks or 3 weeks time they send another letter saying no, now the rains have come, so we want to make it 18%. No, in weeks time you take decision, so that is too quick, should not happen like that. Now again more rains are coming these days, so are they going to reduce it further? So, this is a kind of a bad situation, especially from the exporters and the producers point of view, industry's point of view. Therefore, I think Public Utilities Commission should take up this. That is their fundamental duty. It is a public, they should address, they should try to protect, while safeguarding the CEB and the supplier side, and they can survive without making permanent losses. Public Utilities Commission should take the interest on behalf of the public also.
Absolutely.
So, sometimes I do not see it.
Right.
So, unfortunately, which should not be the case.
What measures need to be taken, Professor, for the CEB to put its house in order?
I think the CEB and the country, in order to make this come out of this problem, we must identify where we have gone wrong.
Right.
So, I have been in this sector for the last 30 years in various functions like power plant operator and various other supply services, and then there is the CEB vice chairman and chairman. So, I know this industry fairly well. So, I understand that this CEB, due to variety of wrong decisions in the past 30-40 years, have made their generation to be depend upon 20% of generation to come from burning oil. oil is not a good candidate for power generation in the world. In the world, only 4% of electricity is generated by oil, even that is by the oil producing countries, not oil importers like us. So, unfortunately, we have made power plants to produce 20% or above of our electricity in an expensive way. For example, if you take today diesel price about 350 rupees a litre, right. If you take a litre of diesel, you can make maximum 5 units.
Okay.
So, 70 rupees for diesel alone. Forget about spare parts, the other oils and the cost of the capital investment, etc. Oil, diesel alone you need 70 rupees, right, fairly high. And if you take even heavy fuel oil, furnace oil, it comes to about 50-55 rupees. So, fairly expensive electricity. But if you take coal today, 1 kilogram of coal comes to this country today about 50-55 rupees. So, the cost of a unit from a coal power plant is about say 20 rupees.
Okay.
20 rupees. Compare 75, 55 and 20. So, people are against coal, right, because saying it is polluting and all that. But you know, if you take India, they look at the economics, they are doing well, and about 70% of their electricity comes from coal power plant. One reason is they have their own coal, the other one is they import lot of coal.
Right.
Therefore, Indian industries are prospering. Now, go to any shop, any hardware shop or to the road and see how many Indian vehicles are on the road, and see how many products of your hardware is made in India, everything, because their cost of energy in general is fairly low. So, the industries are prospering, and some of our industries have also moved into India, like garment factories, because of the cheap labor on one hand, cheap energy on the other hand. So, I think we should identify that fact and now move away to a better or cheaper fuel source. Now, we have power plants.
This is a political decision.
Political decision. Now, suppose we can't go for coal power because coal power financing is now difficult. Now, at least we must make sure we at least now procure next cheaper fuel, which is the LNG, liquefied natural gas.
Right.
So, now we are building right now a 350 megawatt LNG power plant in Keralapitia.
Okay.
But there is no any move to buy LNG, and this power plant, which will be commissioned by early next year, will start to run on again diesel oil, and next year again CB will say our generation cost have jumped up, and therefore we want a upward revision of the of prices. So our at the moment, the way we are managing our electricity prices are in rising. This year, next year, in the year to come, rising and rising and rising, destroying people, destroying industries, destroying exporters. At least there should be some leadership to go ahead and buy a terminal to unload LNG and then to supply LNG and go to a good LNG contract without making mistakes, and to supply many power plants which can operate on LNG on cheaper source. So, in simple terms, unless we get our production cost low, our electricity crisis will continue, and the people will have to face this problem, industries and everybody will have to face this problem. I don't see even presently anything done to put the sector in the correct path other than the restructuring.
Right.
Restructuring process is going on, but restructuring is not the answer to get the prices down. Restructuring is separate, that is good, that will put some efficiency into the system, but our generation costs we must get down. That can be done only by fuel switching, turning away from expensive oil based electricity generation to at least to LNG.
Right. Professor, is there a collation, or is there a group of like-minded individuals who are able to advocate for positive change in the power sector? Because I mean, when we talk about aspects like human rights or constitutional rights, legal reform, we have a very good ecosystem in Sri Lanka where the moment there is some bad bill gazetted,
Yeah.
there's a host of
Yeah, I see.
individuals and groups who will
Come.
sort of, rise up against it and challenge it. Since it's also highly technical and it's a bit complicated to understand for the common man, is there such an ecosystem?
I don't see that, even up to now that is happening, because you can see that really in the present context, CEB engineers who are the professionals who are knowledgeable about this subject, who is handling the sector, should do it. And I don't see they are so much into this put their shoulder to the wheel.
Okay.
And that is because they are monopoly. So they don't have any competition. So even now presently you can say the PUCSL takes CEB's costs and say cost has to be recovered.
Right.
And say they don't push CEB, okay, you must get LNG into your equation by end of 2024. There's no such pressure.
Okay.
And therefore I would say in the electricity sector, people get up in the morning and look at the sector, and that's all, but there is no cohesive force which is driving the sector in the right direction. Occasionally this has happened with some secretaries in the power ministry and so on, occasionally, but I don't see much of that happening now. That is why I earlier said it is a ship without a captain. So it goes here and there and this port and that port and all that, but not in the correct path, in the optimum way. But I think this right time we are now looking for economic reforms. I think it is good that the IMF is intervening, because IMF I know has been advising CEB to be cost reflective and without losses for over the last 20-30 years. In their every mission they have been emphasizing that, but no one cares. But this time we have to care about IMF's insistence, because otherwise you don't get the next loan component. So therefore they have a higher hand, and that is good, but they should be careful in pushing the CEB not for immediate cost reflectivity or recovery and harming the industry and the exporters. So they should look at the longer term impacts of that and let CEB recover costs in such a way that they don't harm the industries and the people.
You said that the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka, or the PUCSL, must play a more active role.
Yes.
Just to read off their website, the PUCSL is the economic, technical and safety regulator of the electricity industry in Sri Lanka and the designated regulator for petroleum and water services industries. They have to play a key role. Speak to us about what exactly they should be doing.
Yeah, I think they are empowered to fully control the sector. If you take the water sector, the legislations are not done to empower them.
Right.
So although it is in their portfolio saying that they should control petroleum and water sector, their legislations have not been done to empower them. But the electricity sector, that has been done through the Electricity Act. So they are fully empowered.
Okay.
So I think they should intervene more with CEB affairs and the implementation of the long-term least cost generation expansion plan, which has not been very effectively done over the last 10-15 years. Only one issue is they had a big kind of conflict with CEB for a long time, and the CEB was not listening to them for some time, and they couldn't take any actions and so on and so forth. But I think now Public Utilities Commission has a good team, I think, led by a good chairman, and I think they are balanced. They can try to do something. Okay. But of course I don't know how much political pressure comes on them, because in Sri Lanka political, even though you are called an independent commission, sometimes you are not so much independent. So the political interference is everywhere. Therefore I don't know, I can't predict about their independence, but I think they should try, even within the limitations, try to do an independent job protecting both CEB as well as the consumers.
Absolutely. My final two questions on the program. Professor, the world is moving towards renewable energy production such as solar, wind, hydropower. This is also in line with the sustainability development goals and undertakings made at COP conferences. How are we faring in this regard?
Yeah, can see now if although the world is talking a lot about renewable based electricity generation, even by today world total electricity generation by renewable sources is just about 25%. 75% of the world electricity generation is from coal, natural gas primarily.
Okay.
And nevertheless you can see when the world average is 25%, Sri Lanka's renewable electricity generation has never gone below 25%. It has in some years touched even 70%. In good hydro years, we have produced about 70% of our electricity from hydro led renewable sector. And on top of that, in the recent years, we have I think commissioned a lot of solar as well as wind power plants in the country, and a lot of projects are in pipeline. So I think renewables have their own merits and demerits, but in the short run, to take us out of this economic crisis and the high cost of electricity, renewables are not the number one choice in my opinion.
Sure.
They are good, we must accommodate as much as possible on a comparative basis, because their prices are in between, maybe about 30-35 rupees for solar and maybe similar for the wind, right, whereas coal is about 20 rupees, oil is about 50-70 rupees. So solar and wind comes in between, but they have an issue. The issue is they supply electricity when the resource is available. When the sun shines, solar power plants use power, but not when we want. Now when we want electricity in the evening for our peak demand, to meet the peak demand, we can't get them to support. And if you add batteries to solar, cost will double.
Right.
35 will become 70 rupees. So it is almost comparable with any other technology, higher side. And wind is blowing when in the season. Now in Sri Lanka we have now these days, now yesterday I checked, wind generation was 35 megawatts, whereas we have over 250 megawatts of wind power plants. So out of 250, only about 10% is generated operating these days because of off season. So in the off season you need some other power plant to back up them.
Right.
So there are multitude of issues, you know. So but nevertheless we should go for solar, wind, hydro as much as possible, but we must get our bulk power generation cost down by introducing at least LNG even at this last moment.
In a minute, could you tell us, can we recover from this crisis in the energy sector?
It will not be done in the next few years, because we have not taken appropriate action. We will have to face high electricity tariffs for the next 2-3 years until we get a cheaper source of fossil fuel generation.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Anura Wijayapala, former chairman of the CEB. Thank you for sharing your insights with us.
Yes, glad to be here.
Thank you for watching us. We'll see you again tomorrow. Good night.